Hi and welcome to the follow-up lessons for schemas. Here we will talk about schema registry and schema compatibility. So previously we have been talking about schemas in general, so we included in our reasoning also schemas that are present in relational databases or data warehouses, generally in structured data stores. And the nice thing is that the schema is directly included in the data store in question, the data store, so relational database or data warehouse. When we talk about streaming, and mostly streaming brokers like Apache Kafka, Kinesis, or PubSub, or any other streaming brokers, there is a different approach because generally these streaming brokers consider the data as nothing more than a simple array of bytes, meaning that there is no kind of schema describing the data in the streaming broker. And the question you should ask yourself is where to store the schema definition for this streaming data, and more specifically for the structured streaming data. On an object storage, as a files, maybe as an external dependency. Well, there are multiple choices, but probably the best one and solution that's proven to be very efficient is a schema registry or similar component for any streaming broker you are using. I'm talking here about streaming schema registry because it's a very popular component in Apache Kafka to ensure the schema compatibility between producers and consumers. What does it mean specifically? We have our data processing job and we add an extra component, which is the schema registry, where we validate the input data against the most recent version of the schema for producers, and we also validate this input data against the schema that is accepted by the data sync so that we don't break anything. So here, if for example the producer would add some extra fields that are not recognized by all the consumers for this topic, well, the schema registry would ensure that the data couldn't be produced at all, because of course it would mean breaking schema compatibility and also breaking all the consumers. So it's a very important piece in the streaming system to ensure that everything works as expected and we don't have any issues related to kind of simple but very simple to avoid errors like schema incompatibility. And when it comes to the schema compatibility, there are different strategies you can define in schema registry, and the first of them is the backward compatibility, meaning that the consumer with the most recent schema version can still read the data for the data produced with previous schema versions. And typically it's an example here. We have two different schema evolutions. The first schema evolution is compatible because we generally only removed one attribute from the schema, meaning that the consumer doesn't care about this age field, whereas in the second example you can see that the consumer will simply break because we literally changed the type of the field, meaning that the schema backward compatibility is not respected and the consumers reading data that is produced with this old schema, so strings, will simply break. Now there is the similar example, but for the forward compatibility, meaning that the consumers that have previous version of the schema can read the data that is produced by the new schema. So again, here the first example we succeed with the age attribute, and the second example we fail simply because the consumers with the V1 expected to find the address attribute, which is required in the input data, so in the V2 schema. The third one is the full compatibility, meaning that the backward and forward compatibility can work together. And there is also transitive compatibility, meaning that backward and forward compatibility apply to not only the previous versions of the schema, but also to all previous or all next versions of the schema. And this is the worst. There is no compatibility at all. We are very flexible. We can do any change we want. But for example, if our consumers are expecting one field and we remove it from the dataset, well, it will not work and they will be broken. So it gives you flexibility, but also brings a lot of risk of failures. And that's all for this lesson. We are not done yet with the schemas, so stay tuned and see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.